The bell rang, but no one moved. Inside class 3-1, the silence was sharp enough to cut air. Students clutched pencils with shaking fingers, eyes glued to their test papers, breaths held like they might disturb questions. Kang So-yeon stared down at her own sheet, her mind a blank page. 10 minutes left, and question 18 still blurred in front of her. She glanced at the clock, then at her sleeve. Just beneath the cuff of her school blouse, a sliver of folded paper peeked out. Tiny handwriting. Answers she had memorized just in case. Her heart pounded. She had never cheated before. But today wasn't about pride. Today was about survival. 3 rows behind her, Jung Woo-sik tapped his pencil in rhythm with his heartbeat. He had already finished the exam. Typical. His confidence annoyed everyone, but his grades justified it. He stretched his legs under the desk. That's when he saw it. A subtle flick of So-yeon's wrist. A glance. A twitch of fingers retrieving something from under her sleeve. He narrowed his eyes. No way. Not Kang So-yeon, the school's golden girl. The only person who had ever tied with him in the rankings. Not her, but she was doing it, right in front of him. After the exam, students poured into the hallway like steam escaping a kettle. Woo-sik waited by the stairwell. And when So-yeon passed by, her face pale, lips pressed tight, he stepped in front of her. Busy morning? She didn't even blink. Move. Nice technique, by the way. The wrist flick elegant. She froze. For half a second, her face dropped. Then the mask came back. You didn't see anything. Oh, I saw plenty. She looked around. The hallway was still full. Let's talk. Somewhere else. They stood behind the old building where no one ever went. The cold wind bit at their uniforms, but So-yeon didn't flinch. I know what you think you saw, she said. He crossed his arms. No need to play lawyer. I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to pass. Which is funny, considering you always do both. She looked away. He tilted his head. So what happened, Miss Perfect? Her voice cracked. I didn't have time to study. That's new. She looked him straight in the eye. My dad collapsed last week. He's in the hospital. I go straight there after class. I sleep 3 hours a night. That shut him up. For once, Jung Woo-sik had no sarcastic comeback. I wasn't going to cheat, she continued. But when I saw the clock and realized my head was blank, I panicked. He watched her, longer than she liked. Finally, she asked, Are you going to report me? He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a gum wrapper from his pocket, unfolded it, and handed it to her. Inside, a perfectly written answer key in tiny print. She blinked. You. I was planning to cheat too, he said with a smirk. Didn't need to, but I had it. So I guess that makes 2 of us. She stared at the wrapper, then at him, and for the first time since the exam, she exhaled. The next day, everything was the same, except it wasn't. Woo-sik made sure of that. He walked into class, dropped into the seat beside hers, and whispered loud enough for half the room to hear. Hope you brought a fresh cheat sheet. Or should I lend you mine? She didn't respond, but the tips of her ears turned red. Later in math class, when she scribbled an answer and the teacher walked by, he said, Careful, don't let your sleeve slip again. She shot him a look that could kill. Still, she didn't say a word. But after school, she found him leaning against the gate. What are you doing? She snapped. He looked up from his phone. Waiting. For what? You. She rolled her eyes and started walking. He followed. You should get used to having a bodyguard. Someone needs to make sure you don't collapse next. I don't need your pity. Not pity, he said. Maybe curiosity. About what? He paused. About why you're always trying so hard to look like you're not falling apart. She stopped walking. He didn't smile, didn't tease. Just looked at her like he saw something no one else bothered to look for. She turned away, but didn't tell him to leave. They started studying together. At first, it was awkward, silent. He'd sit across from her in the library and hum loudly until she snapped. She'd correct his grammar in his notes, and he'd purposely misspell words just to irritate her. But slowly, the space between them warmed. She caught him sketching in the margins of his textbooks. Caricatures of their teachers, little dragons breathing formulas. He caught her writing chemistry notes on old napkins from a hospital vending machine. "You're still going every night?" he asked. "Of course," she said. He nodded, said nothing else. But the next day, he brought her a blanket, folded, clean, with a note inside. 3 hours is not enough. At least nap warm. She stared at it for 5 whole minutes before she folded it back up and placed it gently in her locker. One evening, while reviewing formulas in the back of the classroom, he asked her, "What's he sick with?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Stage 4 liver failure." He sat very still. "How long have you known?" "Since last winter." He swallowed. "That's why you started losing your ranking." She nodded. "I thought you were just slipping," he muttered. "I wanted to tell someone," she said, "but if I start talking about it, I might break." His voice was quiet. "Then break. Just don't do it alone." She didn't cry, but she wanted to, for the first time in months. 1 week later, during homeroom, the vice principal entered the classroom. Her eyes scanned the room, then landed on So-yeon. "Kang So-yeon, come with me, please." Whispers erupted. So-yeon stood slowly. Her legs felt like ice. Outside, the hall was silent. Inside the office, her heart pounded against her ribs like a drum. On the desk lay a photocopy of her cheat sheet. Someone had turned it in. The teacher didn't yell. She didn't ask questions, just said, "Is it true?" So-yeon couldn't speak. Her mouth went dry, and all she could think was, he told. That afternoon, she waited for Woo-sik by the school gate. When he appeared, she walked straight up and slapped his shoulder. Hard. "What the hell is wrong with you?" He blinked. "What?" "You told them." "Told who what?" "About the test." "About me?" His expression shifted. "You think I? Who else knew? I didn't say a word." "You're lying." He stepped closer. "I wouldn't do that." Her voice cracked. "Then who did?" He didn't answer, because he didn't know. But her silence was louder than her accusations. And when she turned away from him, something in his chest cracked wide open. 3 days passed. Calm. So-yeon didn't speak to him. Not at school. Not in the library. Not in the hallway where their shadows used to accidentally align. She changed seats in class. Left early after lessons. Stopped bringing her usual books to the library. And Jung Woo-sik let her. Not because he didn't care, but because the look in her eyes when she accused him was something he couldn't unsee. Hurt, disappointment, and something worse, like she had expected betrayal, like it was what she deserved. On the third afternoon, he stood by the vending machines near the east gate, tapping a juice can against his palm. She walked past him like he wasn't there. He didn't look at her, just said quietly, "I didn't tell anyone." She kept walking. He added, louder this time, "I'm not the one who turned you in." She paused, just for a second, then walked faster. The school announced an official warning. Kang So-yeon would retain her academic status, but be removed from the upcoming model student ceremony. There was no mention of what she had done, but everyone knew. People whispered behind textbooks, pretended not to stare when she passed. One student left a fake cheat sheet on her desk before class. She said nothing, did nothing, just sat, took notes, raised her hand when asked. But even her handwriting had changed, tighter, colder, as if she was shrinking inside her skin. Woo-sik watched from the back of the classroom, jaw clenched. He wasn't used to caring. He didn't like how it felt. He thought about telling her the truth, that he confronted the homeroom teacher the day the investigation began, that he defended her, risked his own record to protect hers. But what would it change? She already thought the worst of him. Then one day, she didn't come to school. Not the next day either. Or the one after that. On the fourth day, Woo-sik stopped waiting. He asked the front desk for her attendance record. The secretary frowned, then said she had submitted a hospital note. He felt his stomach drop. The hospital. He took 2 buses and walked 10 minutes through cold wind and cracked sidewalks until he found the building. Yanawa Medical Center, room 312. He almost turned around twice. But when he reached the door, he saw her inside through the glass. She was sitting beside a hospital bed, one hand resting gently on her father's frail fingers, her head bowed. There were no textbooks, no planner, no traces of the perfect student. Just a girl who looked like she was holding the weight of the world with both hands. He knocked softly. She didn't look up, so he opened the door. She froze when she saw him. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice low. "I brought these." He stepped forward and placed a stack of books on the small table. Math, science, vocabulary lists, practice tests. "I marked the pages you missed. You're still behind in 2 subjects." She stared at the books, then at him. He spoke again, quieter this time. "I didn't tell the teacher, So-yeon. I swear. But even if I had, I would have told him the truth." She blinked. "What truth?" "That you're not the kind of person who cheats. You're the kind of person who's drowning and still shows up anyway." Her throat tightened. He took one more step toward her. "I never wanted to be better than you," he said. "I just wanted to be by your side." Silence filled the room. The machines beeped steadily. Outside, the world moved on. Inside, everything stopped. She looked at him, really looked at him, and the tears came without warning. For the first time, she didn't try to hold him in. And when he stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her, she didn't resist. She leaned in, and in that fragile, quiet hug, something finally broke open, not in pain, but in relief. They sat together for a long time. No explanations, no demands, just presence. Later, she whispered, "I'm tired of pretending I'm strong." He answered, "Then let someone be strong for you." When she returned to school, the whispers didn't sting as much. She still walked with her head high. But now, when the comments came, she didn't look away. She looked back. And sometimes, just sometimes, Jung Woo-sik was there beside her, offering one of his signature smirks to anyone who stared too long. They didn't announce anything. They didn't have to. People could see it. The way they moved through the halls, not as rivals anymore, but as something stronger. Partners. One day, during break, Woo-sik handed her a notebook. Inside were mock exam questions. On the last page, he had scribbled a single line, "Let's compete again. But only if it means we're both still standing at the end." She smiled, then took out her pen and wrote underneath, "Deal." Spring crept back into the city like a slow secret. The uniforms were lighter, the mornings brighter. Teachers grew more lenient, and students began counting down to midterms, mock exams, and then the final sprint toward graduation. Kang So-yeon sharpened her pencil and rewrote her schedule. Same girl, different reason. She no longer studied to outrun her fear. She studied because she wanted to prove to herself that she still could. And even if she fell behind, even if the rankings slipped, she was no longer running alone. Jung Woo-sik made sure of that. Their study sessions became a quiet routine. Every Friday afternoon, they met at the back table of the library. Same chairs, same silence, same stack of notes. Sometimes they argued over answers. Other times, they sat in complete quiet, their pencils scratching the page like 2 hearts beating in rhythm. Once, he brought her banana milk without asking. She took it without saying thank you. But he saw the corner of her mouth twitch upward. That was enough. "So," he asked one day, "have you decided where you're applying yet?" She nodded, eyes still on her book. Medical track. Seoul Women's University. He raised an eyebrow. "Figures. What's that supposed to mean?" Only you will want to add more pressure to your life on purpose. She rolled her eyes. It's not pressure. It's purpose. He smiled. Then I hope you get it. She paused. What about you? He hesitated, then muttered. My grades are good enough for SNU. Wow. But I'm not sure. She looked up. He avoided her gaze. It's hard to want things when you're used to being disappointed. Her voice softened. You're allowed to want something big, Woo-sik. He looked at her, quiet for a beat. Even you? She smiled gently. Especially me. One afternoon, while reviewing literature notes, she glanced at him and asked, Why were you always competing with me anyway? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, Because you were the only one who made me feel like I wasn't invisible. She blinked. I thought you hated me. I did, he said, but only because I want to be close to you, and you were always too far ahead. Her pen stopped moving. That's not true. He looked at her. I wasn't ahead. I was just hiding. Their eyes held, longer than before. Then she whispered, But I'm not hiding anymore. He nodded. I noticed. Hospital visits didn't stop, but they felt different now. She no longer sat there alone in silence. Some nights, Woo-sik would wait outside the gate with a hot drink. Other nights, he'd send her small texts, 1 page at a time. Don't burn out, you're not a machine. Eat. Seriously, you're not skipping again. And on a particularly hard day, when her father had second surgery, he left a post-it on her desk. You don't have to hold the world. Just hold on. She kept it in her pencil case, right next to the tiny cheat sheet she never threw away, not out of shame, but as a reminder of where she started, of what she survived. Whispers in school faded slowly. Students moved on. New rumors took their place. Some still looked at her with doubt, but most had simply forgotten. Only she and Woo-sik carried the full story, and somehow that made it sacred. One rainy afternoon, they stayed behind in the empty classroom after study club was canceled. The windows fogged up from the cold. She stared out at the playground. Do you ever think about what happens after all this? She asked. He sat beside her. Like after high school? Yeah, what we'll become, where we'll go. He nodded slowly. I used to think everything ended here, that this place defined everything. And now, he looked at her. You make me believe there's more. She turned to him. I used to be afraid of the future. He leaned closer. What about now? She smiled. Now I think it might be the best thing that ever happened to me. The final mock exams arrived. They studied harder than ever. Less competition. More collaboration. She helped him outline his essays. He helped her with advanced physics. They corrected each other without ego, without pride. They were equals, and they knew it. On the day scores were posted, they stood side by side in front of the bulletin board. She found her number first. Not first place, not even top 3, but not last. Respectable, recovering. She sighed, then found his, higher than hers. She looked up at him. He didn't smirk, didn't gloat. He just said, We did all right. And she smiled. We really did. That evening, she went to the hospital like always. But this time, she brought him with her. He stood awkwardly by the door, holding a bouquet. Her father, thinner, paler, but smiling, reached out. You must be the boy I keep hearing about. Woo-sik bowed. Yes, sir. You look like trouble. He grinned. I am. So-yeon blushed, but when her father looked between them, he said, Thank you. Woo-sik shook his head. I should be thanking her. Later that night, as they left the hospital under a darkening sky, she stopped in front of the gates. He turned. What is it? She looked up at him. I think I like you. He blinked. You think? I'm pretty sure. He chuckled. Well, I'm definitely sure. She stepped forward. Close. I wanted to say it first. Why? Because I don't want to spend the rest of my life catching up to you. He touched her cheek gently. You've always been ahead of me, even when you thought you weren't. And then, finally, he kissed her. Soft, warm, real. The kind of kiss that rewrote everything. For the first time in years, Kang So-yeon allowed herself to feel light, not carefree. Light still pressed on her shoulders like a full backpack, but light enough to breathe without guilt, to laugh without flinching, to want things again without feeling selfish. And a lot of that had to do with Jung Woo-sik. Their rivalry had turned into something deeper, something softer. No titles, no rules, just two people leaning into the quiet between them. Piece by piece, they kept it secret, not because they were afraid, but because it felt like theirs. Something they didn't want the world to touch just yet. He still teased her in class. She still rolled her eyes. But behind the library shelves, she held his hand beneath the desk. And sometimes, in the rooftop stairwell where no one ever went, he kissed her like she was the only thing in the world still worth staying for. One afternoon, she brought him a sketchbook. Inside, her notes, not for school, for him. Tiny thoughts, small memories, things he'd said, things she hadn't had the courage to say aloud. He flipped through the pages in silence. At the back, she'd written, "You found me when I was already falling. You didn't catch me. You climbed down and sat beside me." He closed the notebook carefully, then looked at her like she'd just handed him the sky. Her father's health remained unpredictable. Some weeks were calm. Others brought new treatments, sudden fevers, long nights at the hospital. But now, when the worst came, she didn't face it alone. Woo-sik showed up with coffee, with flashcards, with silence when she needed it. He never pushed, never asked for more than she could give. But he was always there. That, she realized, was the difference between love and rescue. He wasn't there to save her. He was there so she didn't have to save herself alone. One day after class, her homeroom teacher called her in. The woman cleared her throat and said, "We receive an anonymous letter." So-yeon tensed. The teacher continued. "It said your name was removed from the model student ceremony due to a misunderstanding, and that you since maintained near-perfect academic recovery under unusually difficult circumstances." She looked up, eyes sharp. "Did you write it?" So-yeon shook her head. The teacher handed her the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, no signature. Excellence isn't never falling. It's standing back up with more grace than before. No one does that better than her. The teacher gave a small smile. "The board has decided to reinstate your recognition." So-yeon sat still, then whispered, "Can I decline?" The teacher blinked. "You don't want it?" She smiled gently. "I don't need it anymore." Later, she confronted Woo-sik behind the gym. He was pretending to tie his shoes, like he hadn't been waiting. "You sent the letter," she said. He didn't deny it. "I didn't use your name," he muttered. She stepped closer. "Why?" "You deserved it. I told you I don't need awards." "It wasn't for the award," he said, standing up. "It was for the apology you never got." Her breath caught. "I've made peace with it." "I haven't." She touched his hand. "You don't have to fight for me." He met her eyes. "But I want to." The final exams approached. They studied harder than ever. But it was different now. Not desperate. Not fearful. Just steady. Every correct answer felt like a step forward. Every mistake became a moment to grow. And the pressure they once felt alone, the kind that curled into the chest like ice, melted slowly when shared. One night, in the library, Woo-sik looked up from his notes. "You know what still bothers me?" "What?" "That I almost ruined everything." She raised an eyebrow. "You didn't ruin anything." "I could have. That day you thought I turned you in. The way you looked at me." He paused. "That look still burns." She put her pen down. "Do you want the truth?" He nodded. "I was more afraid that you hadn't told than if you had." He frowned. "What?" Because if you didn't tell, then that meant someone else had seen me fall. Someone who didn't care. And that hurt more. He stared at her. You trusted me even when you thought I betrayed you? She smiled. I think I've always trusted you, even before I liked you. He leaned across the table. Kang So-yeon, you're dangerous. She grinned. And you're slow. I've known that since we tied for first in sophomore year. At the start of June, the hospital gave her father a hopeful prognosis. He would be transferred to outpatient care. Her house felt warmer that week. Lighter. Her mother smiled more. Her father cracked jokes again. And So-yeon finally slept a full night, without dreams of clocks ticking or grades slipping through her fingers. Woo-sik visited quietly one Sunday. Her father shook his hand. Still planning to beat her on the final exams? Woo-sik laughed. Not anymore. I just want to graduate on the same day. Her father patted his shoulder. Smart boy. Graduation drew near. Seniors practiced for the ceremony. Caps were measured. Gowns distributed. Letters of recommendation printed with perfect ink. So-yeon stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her uniform one morning, and realized something. She no longer hated the reflection. She no longer saw a girl pretending to be strong. She saw herself, exactly as she was. And for the first time, she liked what she saw. The day before finals, Woo-sik walked her home. They stopped at the same alley they always passed, the one with the yellow graffiti heart on the wall. He pulled a pen from his jacket, took her hand, and wrote on her palm, just once. Finish strong. I'm with you. She looked at the ink, then at him. I don't want to forget this version of us. You won't. How do you know? Because this version is real. The final day of exams arrived like the quiet before a storm. Desks were spread far apart. Pens clicked in unison. Pages turned with the same soft panic as every year. Kang So-yeon sat at her desk with her back straight, eyes steady. No cheat sheet, no backup plan. Just her and the truth. Jung Woo-sik sat 2 rows behind her, diagonal to the right. When the test began, he didn't look at his paper. He looked at her, how she gripped her pencil, how her hand didn't shake this time. And he smiled, a small, private smile before finally starting. 2 hours later, students poured into the courtyard, groaning with relief, laughter, and fake confidence. So-yeon walked toward the benches by the main building, the last place she expected to see him waiting. He held out 2 milk cartons, banana and strawberry. She took the banana without asking. You nervous about results? He asked. She shook her head. Whatever happens, I made it here. He nodded, and then, quietly, I'm proud of you. She looked down at her shoes. Even if I don't make top 10? He tilted his head, especially then. The day of the graduation ceremony was warm. The auditorium buzzed with voices, parents fanning themselves with programs, cameras clicking nonstop. So-yeon waited in line backstage, fingers twitching, heart heavy with emotion she hadn't made room for until now. When her name was called, she stepped out into the light. She didn't look for her rank. She didn't search for the principal's nod. She searched the crowd until she found him, Jung Woo-sik, standing in the very back, no cap, no medal, holding his phone awkwardly. Their eyes met, and that was enough. After the ceremony, she found him outside by the trees where they used to wait for each other after school. He didn't say anything, just held out her sketchbook, the one she had given him months ago, now slightly worn. Inside, she saw he had filled every empty page. Drawings of her, sleeping in class, studying under lamplight, smiling with banana milk, crying in the hospital hallway. At the very back, he had written, You were never my rival. You were my reason. She closed the book. Are you trying to ruin my makeup? He grinned. Mission accomplished. She stepped forward and hugged him, hard. They stood like that while the world spun around them. Classmates shouting, teachers waving, parents crying. And then she whispered, I love you. He didn't flinch, didn't tease, just whispered back, "I know. I've been waiting for you to say it." Later that evening, they sat together on the rooftop of the school for the last time. The sky was streaked with gold, the sun melting down into the edge of the city. "So what now?" she asked. "College," he replied. "Stress. Coffee. Hope." He looked at her. "Us." She smiled. "Yes, us." In the final week of summer before college started, she visited the hospital with her father for one last follow-up. He was cleared for outpatient recovery. On the way home, he said, "You know, when your grades started slipping last fall, I was afraid I'd failed you." She turned in her seat. "You didn't. I thought maybe I pushed you too hard. Tried to make you carry everything." "You did." He looked guilty. "But," she continued, "you also raised me to get back up. So I guess that counts for something." He reached over and took her hand, and for the first time, she saw a peace in his eyes. College came fast. So-yeon and Woo-sik didn't end up on the same campus. But that didn't matter. Every week, they wrote notes. No texts, no calls. Just handwritten notes and sketches, like the ones that started everything. She taped his first letter inside her dorm closet. At the bottom, he had written, "No matter where you go, I'm right behind you. Not to chase, just to walk beside you." Sometimes, late at night, she would think back to that day in the classroom. The first time she reached for the cheat sheet. The moment she thought her whole world would collapse if she didn't get one perfect answer. And now she knew the truth. She didn't need to be perfect. She just needed to keep choosing better, even after she made mistakes. Especially then, months later, on the steps of a quiet campus cafe. She opened a package. Inside, a new sketchbook. And on the first page, a drawing of her, older, stronger, smiling. Underneath, in small letters, "Still standing, still shining." She wiped her eyes and pulled out her pen.